everyone, I'm Shalisha Kerr. I'm the music director at Lifehouse Church, and we've been talking about music theory, especially when used in worship music and in worship ministries. We talked a little bit about scales, about chords, and about how to use music theory as you're growing in your ministry and in your music ability and in your technique and skills. Now I'd like to talk a little bit about rhythm. I think that notes and rhythm are equally important. They're partners when it comes to the structure of music. And so you may feel like you have a good grasp of chords or of vocals or harmonies, but maybe you struggle with rhythm. I encourage you, this is just as important as knowing your chords or knowing your melody lines. I would like to just give you a brief flyover of how we use rhythms in music and how you can use the math and the structure of music to be able to grow in that ability. So basically with rhythm, this is how we divide our beats and our measures in music. Maybe you don't know what those words even mean. So I'm just going to treat this as if you don't really know any of the lingo. So I apologize if this seems pretty basic to you. Basically, the beats are each of the pulses that we feel in the rhythm. And a measure is a group of beats. Most of our songs are going to be in what we call 4/4 time, where we would get 4 beats in each measure. So you would think of that as you might hear a progression, or you might hear a rhythm that would sound like 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. And you can feel where each of those measures begins. The 1 is typically a pretty prominent beat. We call that the downbeat, where you can really feel that you've started a new measure. And you can start to feel those cycles. You can see where they change chords in the context of those measures or in the context of those beats. You can hear where the vocal melody or maybe a guitar lead line or a piano part would fit into the structure of those beats and in those measures. So rhythm is how we divide and organize those beats and those measures, and how all of the other parts of our song fall into those patterns. So I teach piano lessons, and sometimes I teach really young kids. And when I'm talking about this concept of rhythm, if you really think about it, it kind of has a lot to do with fractions. And some young kids haven't even learned fractions in school yet. So I can't really tell them a quarter or a half or 3/4. They really don't understand those concepts. So sometimes I like to call it a pizza. So this is kind of a really simple way. Or if you are past the age where you need to be talking about pizza and you do know your fractions, you can think of it sort of like a pie graph. So if you have a whole measure, and that would indicate a whole pie or a whole pizza, we can divide that into several different sections. So if we have 4 beats in a measure and we have a whole note that would encompass 4 beats, that would be our whole pie. If we were to cut that in half, that would mean that each section would get 2 beats. So we'd have 2 beats in one half of the measure, 2 beats in the other half. We call those half notes. That's the next division. If we were to cut that pizza again, we would be dividing the pie into fourths or quarters. And as you can probably guess, that means that each beat of the 4 beats in the measure would get 1 count. So it would be 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 beats, 4 pieces of pizza. And beyond that, I'm sure you can imagine, you can even divide them further. So beyond a whole note, or a half note, or a quarter note, you can also have an 1/8 note. You can have a 16th note. You can have a 32nd note. It just divides on and on. So whenever we think of beats, we also have subdivisions. So you might be able to hear in the drum beat that there's a lot of fast movement in between where you would feel those beats. That's just a further division of that pizza or that pie or that fraction. So basically, like I said before, a lot of our songs that we do in worship are in 4/4. That's where basically you have 4 beats in a measure and the quarter note gets the beat. But we do have some songs that are in 6/8 time. That's where there's 6 beats in a measure and an 1/8 note is what gets the beat. So you hear those as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And you've probably heard some songs that sound like that as well. Sometimes you have 3/4 time. There's a lot of different time signatures that exist, but the most common ones that we hear in worship songs are 4/4 and 6/8. And you can tell the difference because of how they're divided. 4/4 songs are divided into groups of 2 or 4 or 8 or 16, whereas the 6/8 songs are in multiples of 3. Like we'll have a group of 3, group of 6, group of 9, group of 12, things like that. So just think about a song as how you feel it. Do you feel it in groups of 4 or 2? Do you feel it in 3s or 6s? That'll kind of help you to know what time signature your song might be in. So for our church, we use click tracks. So that's basically a metronome in our in-ear monitors that keeps us on track. Whenever we're using these click tracks, we will a lot of times use eighth notes instead of quarter notes for those clicks, because it actually divides the beat a little bit more so that we can be more accurate. So if the song is typically 1, 2, 3, 4, we'll divide those for the clicks to hear 1, 2, 3, 4. So you'll actually hear the eighth notes in between as well. That just helps us to get a little bit more accurate in the space in between. So there's a couple more rhythm things that I want you to know about, because you might hear a music director, a band director, an instrumentalist, someone indicating where a vocalist might come in or where everybody needs to lift up before the downbeat. And if you don't know what the downbeat is, or you don't know the terminology, you might find yourselves a little bit lost. So we did talk about downbeat. Downbeat is usually the 1 of the measure, and that's usually a pretty strong beat. If you hear the word pickup, a pickup actually occurs when an element of music takes place before the downbeat. So for example, if you're going through a song and it's 1, 2, 3, 4, there might be a vocal line that needs to come in on 4 or 3 so that it comes in actually before the downbeat, or it might come right before the downbeat. We have a song that we've done in the past called God I Look to You, and in that the melody actually comes in before the downbeat. So if you were the lead vocal, you would need to know that you come in before that. So if you were counting in 4s and you said 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, God I look to you. So that actually comes between the 4 and the 1. So that would be called a pickup. I hope that makes sense. So whenever you're aware of the musical structures as a band member, it actually becomes a lot easier to calculate and to sort of feel where a lead line, where a lyric, where chord structures or chord changes happen within the context of those measures. And you take a lot of the guesswork out of it. A lot of times a chord chart might not indicate exactly where you're supposed to change them. It's really nice to be able to feel and understand the divisions of the beats so that you know exactly where they change. So you might hear someone on your team asking how long this chord is held out for, or this rhythm is syncopated, which the word syncopated means that it actually doesn't fall on the numbers but falls somewhere in between or on the off beats, and you might find that a lot in music as well. Or in the 6/8 song, you might have some vocal lines, like in the song Reckless Love. A lot of the instruments are in 6/8 time in groups of 3, but the vocal line or the electric guitar solo or the piano lead line might be in groups of 2 that are kind of counterbalancing that group of 3. These are syncopations, and it's really nice to be able to know the terminology so that if you have a question or if you need help with the rhythm, you know what to ask for. Or if your band leader or someone in rehearsal asks for something, you know what to expect from what they're asking. I hope that makes sense. So I just feel like the more we understand this pie or this pizza, the more we understand the math of the structures and the rhythms in our music, the more we can improve the different aspects of our role. This might be just simply singing a difficult melody line that might be syncopated, or finding your own rhythms of the chord structures if you're not sure where they change on your instrument. Maybe finding where a lead line might fit into the context of the measures. So no matter where you find yourself musically, I just think a solid understanding of rhythm is essential to that. So I hope that this has been helpful. We've talked about chords in the previous video. We're talking about rhythms now. This is basic music theory. When we partner the chords and the scale degrees and the notes with the structures of music in rhythm, we find a great partnership. Those two aspects, rhythm and notes, work seamlessly together to create all of the aspects of the math and the science and the art and the language of music. So I hope that's been helpful. And of course, as always, at any point in time, if you have any questions, please let us know.